Welcome to Capital W. Now let's start the show. Hey everybody, it's your girl, Dr. Wright here with another episode of the Capital W podcast. So thank you everybody for joining me for the podcast. So trying something a little bit different with the podcast. I've been trying to figure out how to do this video and audio portion together for the podcast. I think that would be a really cool thing to start doing with the podcast, have the video version as well. So been working on that, and so finally got that figured out. So this will be the first episode where we'll have the live video component as well as the audio component of the podcast. So anyway, so hope you really enjoy that. So if you are not super familiar with the podcast originally started out as a duo co-hosted podcast, but now I do the podcast solo. And the podcast is mostly about work-life balance, because that is the thing I find that most working women and working moms have the most difficulty with, is having some sort of work-life balance. So for me, it's definitely one of those things that requires a lot of effort to make sure that my work-life balance stays intact. And with it being this pandemic, it's been a little bit more interesting, I will say, to keep that work-life balance going. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is our little segment where we do, and I keep saying we because I'm so used to being in the podcast with somebody else. So the first segment that I'm going to do today is the life hack segment, or the tips segment, where I generally give tips on ways to kind of have a little bit better work-life balance. So today's tip is going to be automation, right? And so I've talked a little bit about how I like to automate things within my life to help me with my work-life balance. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that. So one of the things that I generally put on my list is automating things like, and I've talked about on the podcast, grocery delivery, as one of the things that I use quite often to help me to gain back some hours in my day, right? So that I'm able to have more time, to dedicate to the things that I want to do, like helping my daughter with her schoolwork, or spending time with my family, or whatever it is that I need to get done, right? So, for me, automating many things has become a way that I'm able to give myself back some more time. So automating my bill payments, that's helpful. Automating the grocery delivery, just being able to order it right on the app pretty easily, that helps a ton. Being able to order stuff through Amazon, automatic delivery on household things such as toilet tissue, paper towels. Those things make a huge difference. I have run out of those things, and I'm real bad about forgetting to get those things sometimes. And so being able to automate that sometimes is very helpful. I can be forgetful when it comes to I'm usually pretty good about making sure that I automate like bill pay and stuff like that. But the one thing I always forget to pay is the cell phone bill and the cable bill. For some reason, those two things don't pop on my radar, and I always forget to pay for them. And so being able to automate that stuff sometimes is extremely helpful, and it keeps you from feeling crunched for time, and it does give you back many hours. I know, like in one of the apps that I use for grocery delivery, it calculates like how many hours you saved over time by utilizing the grocery delivery app. And I think I'm up to like 50 something hours saved that I would have spent in the grocery store, right? Buying things. And so I'm so thankful to have that time. And so, and it keeps me from having to go out in the bad weather or the cold or whatever. And so it's really nice to be able to do that. And then, other things that I kind of try to automate, reminders of things that I need to do. I set certain things to remind me to do certain things. I'm trying to get better at reminding myself to do helpful things for myself in the year 2021. Remind myself to try to meditate. Remind myself to eat right. Things like that. I'm good at automating the task. I'm less good about automating care of myself, all right. Now, the next segment that we will get into will be That's My Jam segment. So That's My Jam is the segment where I talk about the stuff that I have been loving and things that are just making me happy and finding joy in over whatever period of time, right? So whatever's on my mind currently, and this just bringing me lots and lots of joy and happiness. And right now I am loving binge watching. I just finished binge watching the Netflix show by Shonda Rhimes, Bridgerton. That show was giving me all kinds of life. It was making me very happy. And I am also listening to an audiobook by Tayari Jones. It is called Silver Sparrow, and it is excellently written. And that's been giving me joy on my drives to and from work for the days that I have to go to work. It's been giving me tons and tons of happiness and joy. So I would recommend either of those or both of those if you are looking for a way to indulge in some very inexpensive and fulfilling fun. And I find audiobooks in general just bring me lots of happiness and joy. I use them a lot in my driving back and forth to work, or if I have to spend long periods of time in the car, if I have to sit in the car and wait for things. Sometimes I do audiobooks. If I have to go and drop my daughter off somewhere, then I will make sure that I'm listening to an audiobook while I'm waiting on her to do some activity. I usually, she's in Girl Scouts, and so sometimes I have to drop her off at meetings, but the time may be, may just be an hour or so, and so it's it doesn't make sense to drive home and go back to the thing or whatever. So sometimes I'll just wait or go grab a coffee or something and then sit in the car and listen to my audiobook. Just brings me all kinds of happiness and joy. It's a way to keep your mind thinking and your imagination going, and so I find a lot of happiness in my audiobooks. And then a good show to binge watch. Who doesn't love a good show to binge watch? I love to binge watch, to find a show and just watch every episode. And thank goodness for all these streaming services, because it has allowed me to be able to do all of that. So I'm very happy. So that is one up of the pandemic, right? So yeah, so that's making me happy. So find your jam. Let me know. Leave me a voicemail with the podcast. You can leave me a voicemail through the Anchor app, and let me know what's making you happy or what's your jam. Or if you watched Bridgerton, you can also send me an email at capitalwpodcast@gmail.com. So feel free to send me an email and let me know what's your jam, what's making you happy, what's bringing you joy. And if you've watched Bridgerton, or if you have read the book Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones. So let me know. All right. Well, I will tell you another thing that's been kind of really making me happy, or I found a lot of joy in last week, is I watched the inauguration. I happened to be working from home that day, so I was able to watch the inauguration. And the good thing is, my daughter's homeschooling right now, remote schooling, and so it was really nice to be able to watch the inauguration and have her there. She was in class at the time, but they were discussing the inauguration, and her teacher did allow the students to turn the inauguration on and watch, and so we got the chance to discuss a lot of different things. But the amount of joy and pride I had to be able to share that experience with my daughter. It was amazing to me to be able to share in such a momentous occasion. And at this point, she's old enough to be able to remember these things and understand some of the significance of it. And for her to look at that TV screen and see Amanda Gorman there reading that beautiful poem that she's written, and she's there with her natural hair and her brown skin, and that to me, my daughter gets to see a reflection of herself, and so that made me very happy. So that was my spark of joy for that whole week. And I'm still feeling excited, and we've had many conversations about it, and I'm glad that she's able to partake in that little piece of history, and also to be able to voice her perspective. It's always interesting to me to get into the mind of my daughter, because she has such a different perspective on things than I do, and so it brings me just a different frame of thought when I listen to the way that she sees things in the world, because it's totally different than the way that I see it, and it should be. So that's another thing that's been bringing me a lot of joy. So very happy about that. So I'm always happy to glean information from her young mind, so that's always nice. All right. So now is the portion of the show where I would do the rapid question segment, and usually I'll go through 5 questions in rapid fire style, and I will give you my answers on the question, and then there will be 2 choices, and I'll give you my choices. So first question is, when it comes to punishment for your children for something that they've done wrong, do you ground or do you take away electronics or privileges? And I tend to be the take away electronics or privileges. I usually take away TV watching, tablet using, computer use, video games, all those kind of things. I can't think of one time that I've actually grounded my daughter or my stepson, but I do take away things. So that's just the way that tends to, especially in my daughter's case, that tends to get her back in line and make her think about what she's done more than saying, okay, you gotta be in the house or can't go anywhere or something like that. When you take away those electronics, usually there's a little change in thought, right? So and I also implement writing apology letters. They have to, my daughter especially has to write apology letters when she does something that's wrong, and she needs to tell me why she's apologizing and what exactly she has done wrong. So, and that tends to work for the most part. So, all right. Second question. Do you prefer to cook at home or do you prefer to order out? Well, if you know me, you know that I am a very good cook, actually. I cook very well. I bake very well. I make cakes from scratch and pies, and I can cook almost anything. However, I am a person who is short on time for the most part, and so I do a little bit of both. When I have the time to cook, I try to make sure that I cook. Or if I get inspired to cook something, I want to try something new, I get some like food magazines, different Bon Appetit, Food Network magazine, a few different magazines dedicated to cooking and food. And so if I get inspired to cook something, then I will go ahead and, on a weekday cook something. Or a couple times a week cook something. But I'm not the cook everyday person. So we order out on occasion. We usually have pizza like once a week because we like pizza, and so we'll usually have pizza, and we live in, Chicagoland. So pizza is, a staple. So we get pizza quite a bit, but also like to cook at home. So it's kind of a split. I would probably say 60-40 split as far as cooking and ordering in. And depending on the week, it could be either 60% ordering or 60% cooking. It just depends. So, yep. So you have to tell me what you do. Do you cook? Do you eat out? What do you do? All right. So question number 3. Do you prefer to stay home or do you prefer to go out in general? Are you a homebody or are you a person that likes to go out? To be honest, I'm really a homebody. I like to be home. So the pandemic really wasn't bad for me when it came to like having to stay in the house. I have not felt and did not feel and have not felt the need to, like, I have to get out of the house. I feel like with my going to work and the couple errands that I do run, that's getting out of the house plenty for me, and I'm fine with that. I like to be home. And before the pandemic, I was a person who regularly got to be home because I was always running here and running there and doing all these things, you know. And so I like to be home. I'm comfortable at home. I like being home. I can binge watch my shows. So yeah, I don't mind being home. Doesn't bother me, and I like it. So so I would kind of prefer to be home than going out. Now maybe when we can finally get out again, maybe I will get some renewed energy for going places, but at the moment I'm pretty good with staying home. So it's all good to me. So all right, fourth question: any predictions on when this whole pandemic is going to come to an end? Well, I've talked about this a couple times on the podcast about predictions about when the pandemic will be over. I think we're definitely moving in the right direction with this vaccination that is available now. And so I think that's going to allow us to get moving again and at least get out and be able to travel some. I think we would still have to be cautious. And just make sure that we're continuing to practice great hygiene, washing our hands, not touching our eyes and our faces and things like that. But I think that the vaccination is definitely going to get people back able to move more freely, and visit their families, and lay someone to rest and go to a funeral if they need to, those kind of things. I think those things have been a little tragic, just not even being able to gather for each other's moral support, and to give your condolences to someone who might have passed away, not even from COVID, just from anything. But or people being able to fellowship in church like they would like to, or whatever their house of worship is. I think those have been probably the most difficult things for people, as far as not being able to get together for those types of occasions where you wouldn't usually get together with someone, and groups of people and families would get together. Then the holidays and stuff. So I think that the vaccination is definitely going to open up some of that again for people, and give us some sense of what we knew to be normalcy. May not be exactly like it was before, but I think that it definitely is going to give us some of that back for sure. So, and then the last and final question: what do you prefer to cook with, butter or olive oil? Well, I like them both. So give me either one, I'm pretty good. But olive oil, I really like, when it comes to sauteing things, stuff like that. Butter is always good too, though. So can't really pick. I don't know. I have to think on that one. Yeah, I have to think about that. So, So we'll see. All right. So if there's anything that you would like me to cover regarding work-life balance on the podcast, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can email me at capitalwpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can send me a voicemail through the Anchor app and might get played on the show. And I'll answer your question. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for listening to the podcast. Bye. Check out the latest episode of the Capital W Podcast. Available now everywhere podcasts are heard. Listen, subscribe, share.